for these Ashara, I have been specifically invited to speak on the journey of Imam Hussein alayhi salam from Madina to Kerbala. Well, I am conscious before I even commence that with only 9 nights at our disposal, each of only about 45 minutes, and today it looks like only 40 minutes, we will have a squeeze on time. But I shall bear that in mind as we proceed. My usual practice is to devote a couple of evenings on the excellence of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because usually there is no opportunity to discuss those excellences, which are in such plentiful. Indeed, we discuss them on the birth and the martyrdom of each Imam, but do not have occasion to do so for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Time, however, will not permit that I devote those 2 or 3 evenings for that agenda, but I hope to cure that defect as I move along, because at every stage and step of that journey, excellence of Imam Hussein alayhi salam shines out. And indeed, there is time to see what lessons we learn, because those lessons are contained at every stage and step of his journey. The first question, therefore, that arises is, why was the journey necessary? Why was it undertaken at all? The short, crisp answer to that in one sentence is to avert the demand for allegiance by Yazid. And so, immediate questions that arise are, who was Yazid, and why was it necessary to avert allegiance to him? Yazid, the successor to Muawiyah, was a person who history has unanimously described as a drunkard and a debaucherer. It is therefore amazing that he should have been a person who succeeds Muawiyah onto the Khilafah of the Muslims. Muawiyah got these Khilafah purely for worldly political matters. And indeed, even in the treaty that he made with Imam Hassan alayhi salam, his role was purely secular. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and after him Imam Hussein alayhi salam, were to supervise his spiritual injunctions and his spiritual decisions. Those remained with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. However, Muawiyah did exceed his limits. After Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was vigilant with him when Muawiyah exceeded his limits and, for example, had the audacity to kill companions of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, like Hujr bin Udair. And I mention Hujr bin Udair because I know when you are in Damascus, you visit his grave. When that sort of thing happened, Imam Hussein alayhi salam censured him and did so in writing, reminding him that these personalities were not only companions of the Holy Prophet, but were innocent and were tyrannically murdered by Muawiyah. These letters, as I said, are extant. I will not detain you on them. But the next thing that Muawiyah did was that in his lifetime, he started taking allegiance for his son Yazid. That, in principle, was not acceptable, because what Muawiyah was seeking to do was to create a monarchy in which after him he passes the Khilafah to his son, who then passes to his son, which is exactly what happened. Imam Hussein alayhi salam objected to it, saying, this is not a monarchy and will not become a monarchy. These appointments will be made by Allah, and that appointment was made in his favor. But in any event, we cannot have as a Khalif a person who is openly, who is publicly a drunkard, a person who has ladies dancing in his court, a person who drinks wine and serves wine in his court openly and publicly, and alcohol as well, and a person who indulges in all kinds of wrongs. To have him as a Khalif was not only to undermine Islam, but indeed to take steps, therefore, to eliminate and exterminate Islam altogether. That Imam Hussein alayhi salam was not prepared to tolerate. When Muawiyah asked for bay'ah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in his lifetime for Yazid, Imam Hussein alayhi salam avoided it, did not say yes to him, did not say no to him, but the way he walked out of that meeting made it very plain to Muawiyah that he was not going to get that allegiance. Well, Muawiyah was a shrewd negotiator, he was a shrewd contriver, and he realized that he would not succeed with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. However, after Muawiyah, Yazid assumed the Khilafah, and he assumed Khilafah on the basis of the will of his father, appointing him as his successor. That was, of course, totally unacceptable and totally improper. However, Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not rise to object to that move, lest it should appear that his rising was for political purposes, was to obtain power, was to obtain position of the Khilafah. Indeed, even when Imam Hassan alayhi salam was martyred, people, particularly from Kufa, wrote to him letters giving him allegiance and asking him to rise and offering to support him if he did rise. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam said, in view of the treaty my brother made with Muawiyah and in view of my agreements with him, I will not rise at this time. Wait until Muawiyah is dead. And until then, I will not take steps of that kind. When Muawiyah died, the first step that Yazid took was, he wrote a letter to the governor of Madina, asking him to seek allegiance from 4 people. The first of them was Imam Hussein alayhi salam, saying that that was the most important step of obtaining the bay'ah, the allegiance of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Second was from Abdullah bin Zubair. The third was from Abdullah bin Umar, who was the son of the second Khalif. And the last was from Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr, the son of the first Khalif. Now, bay'ah in the sense in which it was sought is not like the allegiance, for example, that we give to Her Majesty in this country, which is purely of political nature, promising our loyalty to this country. That is not the kind of allegiance we are talking about. The allegiance that Yazid sought was not only of a political nature, that is embracing the kind of allegiance we give in this country, but also on spiritual matters. In other words, his word was going to be final on spiritual matters. And it was no wonder that Yazid might even say that it is no longer necessary to recite Salah, and it is not necessary any longer to fast in the holy month of Ramadan. That was the kind of character that Yazid manifested, not only held, but clearly manifested from his conduct. May I request you to recite a salawat to welcome Maulana Tirmizi, who is already arrived. Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Well, and so it was a serious matter. It was on Friday, the 26th of Rajab, in the year 60 after Hijrah, that this letter was received by the governor of Madina, who was then Walid bin Utbah, a cousin of Yazid. Such an important governorship naturally went to his own cousin, Walid bin Utbah. Well, when this letter was received in the evening, all the 4, by chance, it being Friday night, were in the mosque of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny. And when they saw that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was there and was also approached, they all converged to him. and said, Yabna Rasulillah, we've been asked to attend government house tonight. Have you been asked? And Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the epitome of truth, immediately said yes. Imam Hussein alayhi salam realized it was a political issue. But the teachings of Imam, and we can start with his teachings straight away, as you can see, at every stage and step, and this is the first step that I'm talking about. The teaching of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in politics is that politics is not a game of treachery and trickery as we know it today. That politics must also be conducted with honesty, with nobility, and with veracity. And so he immediately said to them that I think I know why we are being invited. Muawiyah has died, which none of the three knew, and which was still a secret. Because Yazid wanted to obtain the allegiance from these four before it becomes known to them that Muawiyah had died. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam spilled the beans to all of them and said, Muawiyah has died, and we are being invited to make allegiance to Yazid. And the first reaction came from Abdullah bin Zubair, and he said, I will not go to the government house, and I will leave Medina tonight. I will flee from Medina. And immediately Abdullah bin Umar said exactly that. And Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr said, I will also consider my position. Abdullah bin Zubair then has the audacity to ask the Imam alayhi salam, to say, Yabna Rasulillah, what is your decision? And Imam Hussein alayhi salam instantly says, I will go to this government house and I will expect the governor to tell me this by his own lips, if that really is, as I expect the intention of Yazid to seek allegiance from me. You can see the openness, the transparency that we are talking about in these days was exercised and practiced by Imam Hussein alayhi salam par excellence. He said he would go. That is the quality of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. A coward would immediately say, I will run away, I will flee from here, and I will not face the governor of Yazid, and I will not discuss matters with him face to face. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his policy was exactly the opposite. He said, I will not run away. He was no coward to run away. One of the fadila, one of the excellence of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, as set out by the fourth Imam alayhi salam in the court of Yazid in Damascus, saying that one of the favors that Allah glorified and exalted has done on Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is that He has vested in them the power of courage, the power of nobility in the courage which they exercise. So the Imam alayhi salam says, I will go tonight. He leaves the mosque as the others did and goes back to his house, and immediately he is at home. Another messenger from Walid comes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam's house and says, Yabna Rasulillah, the governor is waiting for you. Meaning you are expected now. The precaution Imam Hussein alayhi salam took was, he immediately gathered his loyal family. He gathered, for example, Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, that valiant and loyal companion of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, indeed the commander of the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And as you expect, from tonight inshallah, every night we shall remember Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. He will become relevant at every stage, and we shall inshallah recount his virtues and learn from his example. Well, and then he gathers his son Ali al-Akbar and Qasim, and don't think of him as a 13-year-old boy. Many a 13 would not have equaled him. Many in multiples of 13 would not have equaled him. And a few more companions, and told them that Walid had called him to the government house. Being called at midnight was a matter that required some discretion on his side. So they should accompany him, and each should carry a sword with him, and some form of arm with him. He does not expect that anything will go wrong, But he said, in case Walid demands from me what I would not wish to give and seeks to harm me in any way, I will raise my voice. And when you hear me raise my voice, barge in. Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam immediately said, oh my master, why that? We will come in with you right from the beginning. And look at the nobility of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He says, Abbas, you have not been invited to the government house. Until you are invited by his misdeed, you cannot come in. So you stay at the door. If need be, I will call you in by raising my voice. But it also shows that the system, the style of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his mannerisms is never to raise voice when he speaks. So that this would be a behavior of his character, that he would raise his voice and warned them. They went, they escorted him to the government house and remained at the door. Imam Hussein alayhi salam enters the state house and enters the chamber of the governor. Having entered the chamber of the governor, he is well received by Walid bin Utbah, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam notices that Marwan bin Hakam is also sitting there. Now Marwan bin Hakam was the secretary of Uthman, and he became the secretary of Yazid. So he was specially sent with that letter to deliver to Walid and ensure that Walid satisfies the requirements of that letter. However, the first thing Walid says to Imam Hussein alayhi salam was that Muawiyah had passed away, and looks at Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Look at the response of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He turns around and says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Look at the dignity with which that comment is met by the Imam alayhi salam. Unanswerable, irrefutable reply that the Imam alayhi salam gave to the governor. The governor could not handle that reply. What could he say? It was rightly so. But the governor was also being given Amr bil Ma'ruf by the Imam alayhi salam, saying him, don't think that we'll live here forever. We not only die, but we return to him on death. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah and we return to him. For what? For questioning, for giving an account of our deeds and misdeeds and be answerable for them. So he told him in so many words, be cautious of the next step that you want to take, because you will be answerable to Allah, as Muawiyah is now answerable for everything he did in this world. It is not the end of this world. So Walid goes further and says, I have now received a letter from Yazid and he is seeking allegiance. And he read the letter out. Imam Hussein alayhi salam turns around to Walid. What a beautiful answer that the Imam alayhi salam then gives. He realized immediately that if he did not make bay'ah, he would be killed. But to him, if death was inevitable, he did not want to die in vain. He wanted to die in a manner in which Islam would be saved, because his paramount consideration was Islam. If he was not making bay'ah of Yazid, it was only because if Yazid became a Khalif with the sanction of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, then he would make sure that Islam is destroyed altogether, is eliminated from the face of earth. Because that was the purpose of Yazid. Indeed, that was the purpose of all Umayyads. They became Muslims when Makkah was conquered, involuntarily. They became Muslims politically, purely on the lips and not in their hearts, and were always keen to see Islam destroyed. They were the people who were at the house of the Holy Prophet to kill him on the night of Hijrah, on the night of migration. They were the people leading in Badr. They were the people leading in Uhud. They were the people leading in Khandaq. They were the people also involved in Khaybar, although the Khaybar belonged to the Jews, but they were involved with the Jews in those battles. At every stage they contrived to kill the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his progeny. This was their chance now to seek revenge from the progeny of the Holy Prophet through the children of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was foremost in killing them for the sake of Islam. Imam Hussein alayhi salam decided he would give his life, yes, and not make bay'ah. Because if Imam Hussein alayhi salam made bay'ah, then that bay'ah would have been produced as a sign of approval, as a seal of approval by Yazid to the entire Islamic Commonwealth, and say, the grandson of the Holy Prophet has made my bay'ah. Who are you to refuse that? And that bay'ah would be binding on Muslims to disobey the rules of Islam. And so Imam Hussein alayhi salam decided that if he made bay'ah, he would be the first to be answerable to Allah, glorified and exalted. So he turns round to Walid. He does not say, I'm not giving you bay'ah, because if he did that, the battle would start then, and this is what he wanted to avoid. He wanted his sacrifice, and let us set out his motives tonight, so that as we go along in the nights to come, we can see his steps matching with the motives that he did not express at that night, but clearly held in his bosom. He wanted to have the solution in a sacrifice of such a nature that would waken the Muslim Ummah from its slumber, and would make them reject Yazid, would make them reject Yazidism, which was more important for Imam Hussein alayhi salam to be eliminated than the personality of Yazid. He turns round to Walid and says, Walid, I have seen this letter, but why am I being singled out for bay'ah? Bay'ah for Yazid is for the whole Ummah. Why am I being singled out? Look at that beautiful cross-examination of the governor by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He got cornered and he spilled the beans. He turned around and said, Yabna Rasulullah, you are the grandson of the Holy Prophet. If you will make bay'ah, then all the Muslims will make bay'ah. So you can see what Imam Hussein alayhi salam feared was exactly the motive of Yazid, and this is expressed in history in clear words. Well, Imam Hussein alayhi salam immediately then retorted saying, Walid, if that is the importance of my allegiance, why take that allegiance at midnight and not at midday? And why take it in the four corners of this governor's chamber and not in the open? So you can see that on that day of the 26th eve now of 27th of Rajab of the year 60 after Hijrah, Imam Hussein alayhi salam's vision was on that Asr of Ashura of 61 after Hijrah. Imam Hussein alayhi salam already had his vision on his martyrdom, a martyrdom which to him would save Islam and keep it in its pristine level. And this is why we say that if today there is Allahu Akbar on Masjidul Haram, this is a credit and a credential of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. In the same breath we say that if Imam Hussein alayhi salam had made bay'ah of Yazid on that night, then that Allahu Akbar would have vanished by now. And God alone knows what would have happened to the Holy Kaaba. This is why the commemoration of Imam Hussein alayhi salam every year is of paramount importance. This is why we gather here and we say to Imam Hussein alayhi salam that if you sacrificed your entire family, if you sacrificed everything that you had with you in order to save Islam and to make sure that Islam reaches us, isn't the least that we owe you that we remember you every year? We get together and weep over all the afflictions that were inflicted upon you. Would that not be the least responsibility of a society of like ours, which is a responsible society, knowing the great debt we owe to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Jannah that we look forward to is because of him. Being saved from the fire of hell, which we aspire for, is because of him. And we hope to attain all that through his auspices. He turns round and says to Walid, isn't it right that you should seek my bay'ah in the open, in the presence of a number of people? May there be 100,000 if that is the number that were in Kerbala. May it be 30,000 if that was the number of people in Kerbala. But in the presence of a huge gathering at Asr time, so that my reply becomes well known to the Muslims from his angle. So that his reply, as he would wish to give it, and as he wished to have certified by himself, would be known not only by those who were present, but those who were to be born later, people like us, centuries later. But in that commemoration of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Islam would be relivened. Islam would get a fresh breath of life every time. So the Urdu poet says, Islam zinda hota hai har Kerbala ke baad. After every commemoration of Kerbala, Islam is relivened. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam says this, Walid was cornered. He says, yes, I see your point, O grandson of the Holy Prophet. So you can go now and let me know when you feel the occasion has come, when people can be gathered and this invitation can be given to you in open. Walid may well have interpreted what the Imam alayhi salam said to mean that the Imam was willing to give bay'ah. Such was not the intention of the Imam alayhi salam at all. And the Imam was ready to leave. Marwan bin Hakam intervenes and says, Walid, stop Hussein alayhi salam from going. Take his bay'ah now. Take allegiance from him now. Because if you allow Hussein alayhi salam to leave your government chamber now, you will never be able even to ask him for bay'ah until numerous heads will have rolled. And when Marwan said this, and the Imam alayhi salam realized that Walid may be too weak to handle that from Marwan, the Imam alayhi salam stood up and said, Marwan, can you threaten me with death? Can either of you threaten me with death? They are there. Kill the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam would have handled both of them with his left hand. But the Imam alayhi salam then stood up and said, didn't threaten them, said, do you threaten me with death? Do you dare threaten me with death? By Allah, if you do, you are a liar. That is what Imam alayhi salam called Marwan bin Hakam. It was a challenge, as it were, to him, that if you can dare even think of doing that, then you are a liar. And as he had already spoken that, he called him a liar. But as that was said in anger, and his voice raised, Abbas alayhi salam, as you would expect, barged in. He barged in straight away. And the Imam alayhi salam says, no, Abbas, this is Medina. This is Medina. We can all go home together. And they all went home together. Next day, things happened that night. The moment Imam Hussein alayhi salam went home, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam already had news that her brother had been called by Walid that night and wanted to know what is it that Walid wanted from Imam Hussein alayhi salam in the darkness of the night. She knew it was sinister news. But time has passed, and I do not wish to start that subject, which is an important subject, when I only have 10 minutes in hand. And so tomorrow, inshallah, I shall start with what happened at the house of Imam Hussein alayhi salam when we have finished with the government house. But to finish the government house story in the minutes at my disposal, the next day, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was on the streets of Medina, he encounters Marwan. So he must have been looking for the Imam alayhi salam in the streets of Medina. He encounters Marwan. I want to say this to you so that the picture of the thoughts of Imam Hussein alayhi salam are completed. So that we are sure, not surmising what Imam Hussein alayhi salam had thought, we are then sure of what his thinking was, what his genius was. And this is what Imam Hussein alayhi salam was. He was an intellectual in his own right. And we will see this every night, inshallah. We will see him as an intellectual personality whose vision went far beyond what the men of his time were able to see. Well, Marwan says, Ibn Rasulullah, I've been looking for you. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, what do you want? What is it that you want to say to me? And Marwan says, I want to give you sincere advice. You refused to make bay'ah last night. You did not make bay'ah rather last night. I wish to advise you quite sincerely to make bay'ah of Yazid. And the Imam alayhi salam says, Marwan, why? He says, because that is in your interest for this world and the hereafter. And the Imam alayhi salam turns around to him and says, Wassalam alal Islam. He says, if I do that, then that is salam, that is goodbye to Islam. So you can see what the Imam alayhi salam had in mind. It is not theorizing after Kerbala. It is not rationalizing Kerbala. These are words spoken by the Imam himself as reported in Sunnite sources. Tabari, the leading Sunnite history book, which I rely on heavily in whatever I am going to say in these 9 nights, also sets out these words and this conversation that Imam alayhi salam had with Marwan bin Hakam, and he said, if I make bay'ah of Yazid, then salam ilal Islam, then it will be goodbye to Islam, because then Yazid will abuse that bay'ah to make people forcibly make his allegiance and then eliminate Islam altogether. More of that in the khutbah that he made when he met Hur. In 3-4 nights, inshallah, we should be discussing his meeting Hur, and the khutbah that Imam Hussein alayhi salam delivered to the army of Hur sets out this point very clearly, in clear words, without mincing words. And then Marwan turns around and says, but isn't that something that is in the interest of the ummah today? And the Imam alayhi salam then uses clear words that have remained historical. He says, Misli la yubayu mithlah. These are words the Imam alayhi salam first uttered to Marwan bin Hakam. He said, a person like me, pious, pure, a representative of Allah, glorified and exalted on earth, Mithli la yubayu mithlah, will never give allegiance to a person like Yazid. People were afraid because of the tyranny of Yazid even to describe Yazid truthfully. The Imam alayhi salam described him in clear words that he is a person whom of such a character that to him nobody can give a bay'ah. I certainly cannot give bay'ah. And the Imam alayhi salam spilled the beans and made it very clear that he would not give bay'ah to Yazid only because he was at a status at which he would not be able to give bay'ah to a person of such character as Yazid. Now, because of 2 more minutes at my disposal before I go into Masaib, let me introduce one other subject here, which saves time in the remaining nights. Is this claim of Imam Hussein alayhi salam a genuine claim, or was it made up? Ma'adallahi ta'ala. It would never be made up because he was a ma'soom in his own right. But in order to convince the youths, let me set out the historical authentication of this view of Yazid. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam was murdered in Kerbala and his martyrdom was complete, when his family was treated in the way as you know it was treated, his tents were burnt and his women were taken prisoners, taken to Damascus, etc. Then for the first time, those companions of the Holy Prophet who were in Medina began to be shaken up. That was the purpose of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to make a sacrifice of such a nature that even those heartless people of Medina would be shaken up, and the heartless people of other parts of Muslim world would be shaken up to say, why all this? Why did not Hussein alayhi salam make bay'ah of Yazid? And the first answer would be his character did not permit him to make that bay'ah. So when the companions in Medina met, they said, we must investigate this, because if it is true, we must support the cause of Hussein alayhi salam, and we must overthrow Yazid. If it is false, then we should command Yazid. And so they appointed a deputation to go from Medina to Damascus and investigate the character of Yazid, and gave the deputation 1 month to return to Medina and submit their report. The delegation went to Damascus, but returned within a week. When they returned within a week, they were called by the head of the companions of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, and asked, "Why are you back in a week when we gave you a month? And what is your report? Is it so ready within a week?" And their answer was, "You gave us a month, but we found it hard to stay in Damascus for a month. It is impossible to stay there. When you go to the court of Yazid, you see women dancing, you see alcohol being served in the courts. There was nothing Islamic. Everything that is un-Islamic is done in his court openly and publicly. He playing with monkeys and apes, and what is Islamic is not performed at all." We could not bear that atmosphere, that situation more than a week, and we have come back to report that he is hardly a Muslim, if a Muslim at all. He does not practice Islam. Indeed, he makes lawful what the Holy Prophet through Allah has declared unlawful, and he makes unlawful that which the Holy Prophet declared lawful. Indeed, and the next thing that the companions of the Prophet did, they attacked the governor of Yazid in Medina, and dethroned him, dismissed him, and appointed their own governor. But indeed, Yazid was not going to take that. He sent a huge army with Muslim in Aqaba, and that army indeed killed in Medina not less than 700 companions of the Holy Prophet, which is further proof historically of the character of that man. And so Imam Hussein alayhi salam braced himself to leave Medina and move out of Medina. Indeed, his first decision was to move to Mecca. But what does he do? The next thing, having prepared his family for his departure, the next thing he does is what is noble, what is indeed characteristic of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. He comes to the graveside of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, and says, "Oh, my grandfather, Yazid has asked for bay'ah. I cannot make bay'ah for him. I cannot stay in Medina, because if I stay in Medina, he will kill me. He will kill me silently. He will kill me in such a way that nobody will even know that he killed me. Nobody will benefit from my death. My answer lies in leaving Medina. But how do I leave Medina when indeed your graveside is in Medina? I would be here every day. Not a day passed in Medina when Imam Hussein alayhi salam would not visit his grandfather's grave." Indeed, it is said that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who said Khuda Hafiz to that grave 11 times, he said Khuda Hafiz and left, could not resist himself, could not carry himself out of the mosque of Medina, would go back to the Holy Prophet and say, "Oh my grandfather, I am not able to leave," until a stage came when his eyes were closed and he went to sleep, as it were. He sees the Holy Prophet in his dream and says, "Ya Hussein, you are not able to leave my grave, but you cannot join me. Has Akbar already been killed? Have you already had Asghar killed in your hands?" With an arrow darted on him, when all you would be asking would be water. "Have you yourself been killed by Shemr? These are conditions, you said, for you to come back to me." When Hussein alayhi salam hears this inspiration from his grandfather, he wakes up, stands up and says, "Oh my grandfather, I will now go. I will have these conditions fulfilled so that I rejoin with you," and makes his last salutation to the grave of the Holy Prophet. He then goes to the grave of his mother and says Khuda Hafiz to the mother. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam says, "Hussein, when have I said Khuda Hafiz to you? When have I left you to go into afflictions on your own, you will find me with you. As you leave the house, I will leave the grave, and I will be with you at every stage and step. Indeed, on that night of Kerbala, as we shall discuss, the night comes, the baby is seen there by even a companion of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But before that, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam on one occasion rushes to the tent of Imam Hussein alayhi salam when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in his prayers, waits the moment he makes salam. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam looks worried. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, "Sister, why are you worried?" Says, "I've heard bad omen. There is a lady who is sitting behind your tent and is reciting Marthia. She is reciting Marthia of your martyrdom. I cannot bear hear these Marthias. What is this going on?" And Imam Hussein alayhi salam turns to her and says, "Zainab, you have not recognized the voice of our mother Fatima. This lady reciting this Marthia is our mother Fatima Zahra alayha salam. She has come down from the heaven. She has left her grave and is here with us to participate in the afflictions that will meet us tomorrow." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.